So, we've got 12 history books of the Bible. Look, for some reason, I'm doing songs based on books of the Bible. I needed a creative outlet, and so I thought, well, there's 66 books in the Bible. If I do a song on each one, it'll take a long time, and I just felt like having a big project to do because songwriting is my hobby. I did the first 5 about 2 years ago. I wrote these songs quite a while ago, but I've just mucked around with it, and it's a hobby, so only just getting around to releasing it. And I did these visuals during lockdown, which was fun. I went back and trawled through all my photos and thought about my history. So I'll just talk about the first song. It's called Sacred Ground, and for each song I've got a little quote here from the book that it comes from that sort of inspired it. And the quote here, it comes, the book of Joshua. It's a fairly depressing book because it's about, I suppose, the Bible has the chosen people, the people of Israel, who are like God's chosen people, and they're going to the promised land, which is God's promised land. And Joshua is about them arriving there. It's the first history book of the Bible, and these 12 history books cover like 1,000 years of Israelite history. And this is the moment where they arrive at the promised land. The problem is there's already people living there, these people called the Canaanites. So it's kind of a book of racial cleansing. I mean, it's hard to palate in a lot of ways today. But I found this bit very helpful, and 2 ideas came out of it. So this moment comes after about the most famous event in the book, where they fight the Battle of Jericho. So the Israelites sound trumpets and the walls fall down because of God's intervention. And in fact, that really, the news goes around the Canaanites, and that's basically the moment at which they win the war, and the Canaanites just let them come in then. But this is directly after that battle, and it's an event where Joshua actually meets the commander of the Lord's army. So he's the commander of the Israelite army, but he meets this person. He sees him standing there, and Joshua went up to him and asked, "Are you for us or for our enemies?" "Neither," he replied, "but as the commander of the army of the Lord I have now come." Then Joshua fell face down to the ground in reverence and asked him, "What message does my Lord have for his servant?" The commander of the Lord's army replied, "Take off your sandals, for the place where you're standing is holy." And I got 2 ideas from that about my own life. One of which was that I suppose God's not just on the Christian side. I literally was in my little church in Glebe, where I go, looking over the wall at everyone walking up and down the street and thinking, God's on the side of all humanity. He was on the side of the Canaanites as much as he was the side of the Israelites, and that makes the book make a little bit more sense. And the second idea was that how rare it is, really, God might have created the world, and he gave the world to various peoples, but it's very rare for him to tell people to take land from other people. An idea about sovereignty. And the picture here is actually of our churchyard and of the scarred tree in our churchyard, which is one of the last remaining ironbark trees in Glebe, and has become a sacred place for the Aboriginal people that have a church within our church. And that's there's some signs there about, it's on NAIDOC Day, I think it was taken. So the second idea I had with this song was an idea about sovereignty, and about how if God made the world and gave it to various people, he doesn't usually, it's very rare for him to give permission to people to come and take the land from them. Like, I don't think he gave James Cook permission to take Australia from the Aboriginal people, and we're still here without their permission. They've still unceded land. And I had that thought too, about what a rare thing it is, and how I wish in my little church and churches all around Australia where there's churchyards and fenced off land, if people could take off their sandals and stand on there and feel that it is holy land, feel the land through their feet, and think about the basis on which they own it. And so this song, I suppose, is by way of acknowledging that this shed and where I live is on Gadigal land, and I've put I've got name blindness about. I'm a bit nervous. I've got name blindness, but I've put an Aboriginal elder, a leader, a warrior from the past, to stand in as the commander of the Lord's army in my vision in verse 2. I've used a European picture of him. And he is a Wiradjuri man, a man of a great fighter for his people, a man who the settlers took his food and scared away his food and fenced off the land, and his people were starving, and he became a very respected and feared fighter. But when he realised he was losing, he also became a man of peace, and he's a very inspiring warrior. I just can't think of his name for the moment. So anyway, I hope it's okay, but I put him in there as an elder past. And I also found an interview with the Maddens, who are Gadigal people, the people who are the original owners of this land. And I saw an interview with them from the Herald. So I put them in there to have a feeling for the emerging current elders and their children who are emerging. And it's by way of acknowledging their ownership of land. Anyway, I'll get into it. Let's just play the song.
It was a Saturday morning on Glee Point Road. I nailed up a sign that said, "Lay down your load." Kinda self-conscious, like I'm the church guy. And over the wall, all the people pass by. On either side, on either side, on either side, God just found. All of it is sacred ground. Then a vision beneath the star tree I saw, an angel who looked like a warrior, frozen by that scary sight. I nervously asked, "You're on my side, right?" On either side, on either side, to neither side can God be bound. All of it is sacred, sacred ground. In lifetime's rush we barely brush this sacred ground. We use it for our shopping walls, our bloody wars, hospital calls, for a span of years, till judgment clears this sacred ground. Well, Joshua made all the trumpets sound, but God told Jericho's walls to fall down. And the chosen people got to stay, till Babylon took them all away. On either side, on either side, and on either side is God just found. All of it is sacred ground. 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 All of it is sacred ground.
Okay, so I do acknowledge Aboriginal, the original owners of this land on which this shed's built. Windradine, the warrior, great man of war and of peace. I acknowledge elders past, elders present, like the Madden family, and elders emerging. I acknowledge that it's unceded Aboriginal land upon which this is built. The next song, I think we're kind of getting through all our technical issues. The next song is about the Book of Judges, and it's called 12 Chops. And the Book of Judges is a great anticlimax because you've got the chosen people and then the promised land, supposed to be flowing with milk and honey, but they arrive there and the template, they don't ever follow the template that God's given them to live by, and they have these judges who are not like judicial judges, but organic leaders, heroes, warriors, who they have ongoing scuffles with the Canaanites and ongoing fights, and it's all very ordinary. And they kind of get worse as the book goes along. So one of the first is Deborah, who's a woman and a fantastic biblical character. But then eventually you get to some pretty terrible judges, and the book ends with this shocking story of sexual abuse and murder by one of the tribes against another member of the tribe who's visiting. And this verse happens. When he got home, he took a knife and cut up his concubine limb by limb into 12 parts and sent them into all the areas of Israel. So she'd been abused to death, and he sent bits of her around to every tribe in Israel to tell them what they've become. And how it touched my life, I thought, well, I grew up in this Christian bubble, happily in my private school, going to church. But all around me, there were orphanages, stolen children, altar boys being abused, terrible, shocking betrayals all around me happening. And I thought about my responsibility and my participation in that. And as brutal and shocking as the biblical story is, how many years did it take for the churches to start taking accountability and stepping up and acknowledging that? And I just was thinking that's how the story touched me. And I suppose I thought, well, God has always, if there is a God, he's always been unshockable by our behaviour. And that's how it touched me. And musically, at the time I was working for the Salvation Army. And at a certain point in the song, I talk about the sweetness of music, and how I almost wish I'd forsake that if I could get rid of the evil in my heart. And I threw a brass band in there, because you can't work for the Salvation Army for long and not really get into the emotion, the beautiful emotional heartstring pulling nature of a good brass band. So there's a little brass band thrown in there as well. Okay.
Sometimes I wish I was a chicken, scratching in mud. Sometimes I wish I was a lizard, no fire in my blood, no sweetness in the music, no patterns in the art, no politics, no choosing, no evil in my heart. We wear what they did, abused and killed a kid. 12 chops include a sin. Our tribes all own this sin. Deborah sent fear on the run. God's love rose like the sun. Gideon was a humble man, but pride consumed his clan. Jephthah was a deal maker, didn't trust God's grace. Samson crashed amazing gifts to chaos and to waste. Orphans, altar boys chase, they did as they pleased. With my good job and my degrees, I did as I pleased. everywhere what they did. Abused and killed the kid. 12 chops and poison. Our tribe is all only sin.
Okay. Well, that's a very sad song. The next song, you'll be glad to know, is a little happier. The third book is the book of Ruth, which is a woman's story, a small story, but a fantastic story of hope in the history of Israel. And, you know, I said this first song had that bit about how God is on the side of the whole of humanity, and Ruth is not from Israel. They've blown it. But she comes to Israel, has a lovely love story. Then she ends up being the great-grandmother of King David. And King David ends up being the line that goes right through the Bible and ends up in Jesus. You know, so it's all very Star Wars-y. And in terms of how it touched my life, well, I just thought about my relationship with Kelly. There she is. Virtually the week I met her, and I thought she looked like a kid. And I said, when did you take that photo? And she said, last week. I was surprised by that. But that verse from Ruth very quickly became my attitude to Kelly too. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. So musically, I start in a bit of a bad place. I regret the introduction to this song, which is a bit daggy. I kind of imagined King David was a boy who sang with a harp to the previous king, King Saul, when he was a kid, before he was a king. And he would entertain King Saul on his harp singing songs. So I imagined him singing a song about his great-grandmother, Ruth, because it would have been a great family story, this wonderful love story. So I imagined that and turned it into a little enclosing introduction, but I kind of regret it. So it starts in a weird place. But then it just... David's harp kind of runs through it all as a sound. Kirsten there asked who's singing and drumming with me. Well, it's just all programmed on the computer. It's me. And I suppose you know that. But anyway, so it just basically tells the story of Kelly's and mine's romance. And yeah, let's get into it.
King Saul had a grumpy disposition. This kid David went in to sing to him, to relieve the stress, looking sharp with his harp. And I dare to guess, sing of the plan when his great-grand wore the flirty dress. Go, granny, go. Great-granny, go. Believe in love. Believe in destiny. Believe in love. Believe in destiny. They say true love don't run straight, but when I saw you, I ran straight to that little gatehouse to woo you. In the basement with the spiders everywhere with your clear eyes that hold no lies, soon hold love in there. I mistook you for a child, but you are older, stronger. I resolved to hang around a little longer, 'cause I knew only you could get me back in whack. But hey, no pressure, you undervalued treasure, forgotten in the hole, but not by me. My matching soul, my wild destiny. Matching soul, my wild destiny. I knew I was gonna trust this destiny. This mess I'm in's a mess for me. You said Ruth's flirty gambit weren't for you, but I felt it and I knew you felt it too. It is God draws the threads together. Maybe not so sweet or neat as Ruth, but it's the truth. God is at the center of it all. bleak at all. And now though things get tough and we get stuffed, it is enough that I believe in love. Was Ruth from Moab's land, who called her man, became the grand to God's kingly plan. Believe in love, believe in destiny. Believe in love, believe in destiny. Believe in love, believe in destiny.
Okay. Of course, life is more complex than that. And it's ironic, really, because Kelly actually doesn't like the Book of Ruth very much. And I mentioned that in the lyrics because she thinks it's a very traditional kind of role for women. But, I mean, it's a very old book. But anyway, that's that one. So next is the book of 1 Samuel. Now, we had 3 songs before Kings, and now there's 6 books about the period of the kings in history, in the history of Israel. There's 1 Samuel and 2 Samuel, 1 Kings and 2 Kings, and 1 Chronicles and 2 Chronicles. And if history pisses you, when you're one reference to the title is that by the time you get to 1 and 2 Chronicles, and it's which pretty much tell the story you've already read, slower and less salaciously than 1 and Samuel and the Kings, which are really quite exciting, really rattling good reads. Chronicles is a little boring, and it's the same stories again. And at that point, it does start to piss you a little bit. So Kelly, it's not you, but this really warms into. And if there is a kind of overarching theme to this album, which is the invisible things being more important in the long run than the material things. And in 1 Samuel is about David sort of taking over from King Saul as king. And David was a very spiritual king in a lot of ways. He's a very complex man, quite brutal too. But there's this event. King Saul took off all his clothes and danced and shouted in Samuel's presence and lay naked all day and all night. So Saul is furious that David is the heir, and he has his own heir, his son Jonathan, who doesn't actually want the kingship. No, David doesn't really want the kingship. Saul's going mad about it, and they have a sort of cat and mouse chase across the landscape. And David, when he's under pressure, he just starts goes into a spacey goddy place where he just goes into a praise thing, and he does that, and Saul sends people to pick him up. I call them assassins here, but they weren't actually assassins. And Saul sends people to pick them up, and the assassins, soldiers, they go into the spacey praise place, 3 groups of them, and then Saul himself goes to sort of pick David up, and he goes into the spacey place and takes off all his clothes, and he spends a day praising. It's a little bit like that World War I story of all the Germans and the English people suspending hostilities for Christmas Day and singing Christmas carols together. It's that sort of a moment. And I just appreciated how David didn't really want the crown, and Jonathan, who's an unsung hero of it, really didn't want the crown. And in my life, it talks about sort of my ambition and my pride and surrendering it. How as I've got older, I haven't, you never achieve all you want to achieve in life, do you? So you have to let that sort of stuff go a bit. Now, I'm going to have 2 songs that continue on one after the other. So the second one is 2 Samuel, because they were originally 1 book. It's just that the technology of the day, the scrolls weren't long enough, so they had to divide them into 2. Butt naked, yep. Apparently, in the painting anyway, though they hide his genitalia modestly. So in the second one, David is the king, and he really wants to build a temple to God, for God to live in, and God won't let him. and makes them use the tent that they dragged across the desert as their holy sort of temple. But God says, I'll build you a house. And it really picks up on that theme of the invisible things being more important than the material things, which is kind of, if there is a theme of this album, that's it. So anyway, and I just think about the invisible things that are important to me, my family and my community and things like that. So let's get into it. So there'll be one after the other without one of these laborious introductions, you'll be glad to know.
Used to think that things would go my way. Used to think of all the giants I'd slay. It's not what I've found. All the confidence of feeling bright, all the confidence of being so right. Where'd they go now? Surrender, surrender the crown. Surrender, lay it down. You can chase it all your life, you can. You can hold it in your cold dead hands. What good does it do? Samuel anointed David king, but him and Jonathan ignored that thing. They dodged and they died. Came the time for David to escape, but he lost himself in clouds of praise, dancing for God. The assassins came, they joined in praise. More assassins came, they joined in praise. Still more assassins came, they joined in praise. The jealous king came, they praised your morning rain. Surrender the crown, surrender, lay it down, surrender, 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 surrender. Ideal king didn't want that bling. The truth that was then is now. God used him to show us how they come, the winds blow, yes, they blow, brick by brick, child from child, day by day, thought from thought, nothing blows that house away. Brick by brick by brick by brick by brick by brick by brick, building me a house. Nothing blows that house away. Nothing blows that house away. Nothing blows that house away.
Okay. It seems like a good time to mention my children and thank Daisy for that fantastic guitar behind me here. Thank you, best present ever, and thank Rennie for this Caesar salad that I'm eating very quietly while the songs play because I can't quite stop the microphone being live. So thanks for the Caesar salad, Ren, and thanks for the guitar, Daisy. It's just wonderful. I'll get into the next two songs. All I'll say about those songs is I don't think they're that great. So they're some of the weaker songs on the album. There's about 4 that I don't think are that great, but I just couldn't be bothered rewriting them. I'm glad that Rennie appreciated the 808s. Rennie's really getting into music, and it's just so enjoyable. And schooling me quite a bit. Anyway, we'll move on. So the next 2 songs are 1 and 2 Kings. And musically, one thing, they all go up 1 key each time. So if you eventually listen to the album all the way through, each song goes up a single key in steps, which was a really bad idea. I just have these ideas, and it meant that's why they're in such an awkward key that I can't actually sing. So that was a really bad plan, but that's what they do. Splendour is about the golden period, the best that Israel ever got. Yes, it is very educational, Kirsten. I meant it actually to be a bit like one of those BBC documentaries where they do this sort of, those art documentaries where some knowledgeable person points at art. Because I figured I'm not really relevant. I don't really rock. All I can really do is clarity. So I just went for clarity. For the history one, maybe for the next one, maybe the next one's poets. So yeah, I'll go more poetic for that. But anyway, the verse here is at the moment when King Solomon, who was the most splendid of the Israelite kings and one of the first, he was David's son, opens the temple. So Solomon did get to build the temple, and he says, "But will God really dwell on earth? The heavens, even the highest heavens, cannot contain you, much less this temple that I have built." And the thing is, he'd built the grandest temple he could possibly build. He was the richest king that just about in the whole region. And on the very day of its opening, he still was aware that if there is a God, he doesn't just live in a little building like that. And I compared it. You'll remember, people who went to Kelly's birthday a few years ago will remember I sang this song. I sort of say, the story of the Israelites is a little bit like the story of a relationship. You start with all the beauty and the excitement and the lust and the splendor of falling in love, but a long relationship, even not just romantic relationships, but any long relationship has long-term things about it that are greater in the end than the first blush of splendor. So it's a song about splendor and another love song about Kelly. And the one that comes after it is the one that was the preview song. So you may have heard it. And I just think this is kind of a bit tongue-in-cheek, really, because, this is when, at the end of Kings, in 2 Kings, it all falls apart. Israel gets completely destroyed by the Babylonians, and they get chucked out, and their city destroyed, and they all get sent into exile, and it's all lost. All the material prosperity, the wealth, it's all gone, and it's about letting go. And of course, I compared it to my teenage heartbreak of my first girlfriend. I mean, that's why God gave us this message. It's about my heartbreak and my girlfriend. And the irony, of course, is that here I am, almost 60, writing about how great it is to let go of your first teenage heartbreak, but I'm writing a song about it. Anyway, here's these two songs.
Already at a feast, we stopped and packed gas station sandwiches. Already at our destination, through foothills driving aimlessly. Gave it all the time we had, so how did time stand still? Your head down in the random grass, your laughter crowned the random hill in splendor. Splendor. Hey, hey. The seed of bronze and gold of Solomon's reign are lost, none does remain, and my bones remind me daily that we do go. But your smile still stirs those bones of mine, and as we crack our jokes, our hearts store treasure cannot decay. Light your coal down fire today, fetch your flaming chariot, put all the crap of years away, someone else can carry it. Follow hand in hand, above thought, above those clouds. Here on this ordinary day, here in this ordinary room, in splendor, splendor. Hey, hey. get until she gave me the flick. So naive, so very dumb. At least she inspired a good album. How could I be so wrong and so sure? Judgment was such a bitter cure. Prospects were poor and business slow. The girl was gone and funds were low. After the book of Israel's kings, nothing remains except three things. After what time destroys, God's promises, His plans, His voice. But as I survey my life's wastelands, the secret of letting go is to know it wasn't meant to stand.
Okay. So now we get to the bit that pisses me, because it's 1 Chronicles and 2 Chronicles, which really tells the whole history story again, but as I say, slower and less salaciously, so it leaves out some of the juicy gossip elements. I can't wait for your matching show from the Korg synthesizer, Korg sampler, Kirsten, of a medical theme. Can't wait for that. So the next one is called Proud of My Church. I go to this tiny little church of about 70 people in Glebe, but I'm proud of it. And that's a real thing. It's hard to be proud of your church. They often make you cringe. And I'm just really happy about that. And the bit from Chronicles that it's inspired by is where David says, "The Lord God of Israel has given rest to his people, and he dwells in Jerusalem forever." So it's sort of, it's just this sense of having made it, because we've jumped back in history to the golden era of Israel again, because it jumps back, and it's almost like a formal and quite positive court record of the events, and you know, I feel like our church, it is like a presence of love and of godliness and of in Glebe, and I really like it. And there we are, wrapping stuff for Christmas, wrapping our little Christmas parcels. And there's a very precious photo there of Patty, who I mentioned in the song, who has now passed away, and she was just a wonderful contributor to our church. Anyway, there in the discard tree in the background again, and in the video here, you get to see so us at Easter underneath the discard tree, washing each other's feet. And I actually made this video last lockdown, and so it refers to how we'll all be together again. So it's sort of relevant again, and we're just about out of lockdown, so that'll be good. And the next one, there's a photo of Daisy as a lion and Rennie as a king. It doesn't mean very much. I just thought it was a cute photo. And 2 Chronicles tells again the story of all the kings that came after the Golden Period and the decline and destruction of Jerusalem. But you kind of count off these hundreds of kings, well, not hundreds, but lots of kings, about whether they're good or bad. This is a good king. This is a bad king. This was a good king. A lot more bad kings than good kings. But the ones who are good, they generally say are wholehearted. And I thought about just committing to things and being completely yourself, and 100% in on stuff. And so I just thought about that. And musically, this is one of the other songs I don't really like very much. Part of My Church I quite like. It's real folksy and fun. But this I just thought it's a bit of a misfire. But anyway, you tell me what you think.
Sitting here, Darcy's preaching on the presence. Patty's helping, look, there's someone new. A visit from the salvos, tell me, does this make any sense? Projector won't work, church. Back 3,000 years to Solomon's great temple. Back 60,000 more, when did dreaming begin? Up to this funny little crew is a humble credential for this sacred place and the spirit within. Proud of my church. Our tradition, our continuum, our connection to his soul. David claimed Jerusalem, they all celebrated. David danced the ark in, they all were elated. When David found repentance, the temple was located. We may feel small, barely there at all, but behind us and ahead, so much blessing flowing through, and though we may have feet of clay, we do go astray. Father, grant us today, grant us, we pray, to be the presence of you, the presence of you. At other churches I've been somehow defensive. For one reason or another, I've always moved on. Come winter when we freeze, and summer when we're sweating, I won't hesitate to welcome you. This one's the bomb. Proud of my church. King Solomon built a mighty temple to God's name, had countless wives and wealth and fame. I am not that guy. King Hezekiah, to secure his people's home, tunnel half a mile through stone. I'm not that guy. King Josiah, New Jerusalem soon would fall, stage the greatest Passover of all. I am not that guy. So what am I? What am I? It says I ought to be, but who could ever be wholehearted? Finding those things buried deep in their own compartments. Can these old lives show me what I lack from holding back some part? Not wholehearted. Now like old Israel, politics, power and control, fight it out for the church's soul. Now today another massive fail, another priest winds up in jail. I'm doing what I can, but oh, what's the plan? Wholehearted, wholehearted. It says I ought to be, but who could ever be wholehearted? sing those things that I keep in their own compartment. Can these old lights show me what I lack from holding back some part? Not wholehearted.
Oh, those visuals, that video is the point, the Wholehearted one. I wasn't that crazy about the song, and it represents the very point at which I got sick of making videos. And so I just threw in Sorry Daisy, some of our old shots of us trying to be rappers, and bits and pieces, and but those black and white visuals from a early Japanese, I think, early sound movie about a cleaner who has fantasies. It's just a visually stunning movie. It's off YouTube. So anyway, we've done. Thank you for staying with me. We've done all the period of the Kings, 6 books. Originally 3 long books. So there's 3 more to go, and we get to the end of Israelites' history. And the next one, This Side of Heaven. Now there's my brother Richard and I hitchhiking, and I just liked it because it had Eden in it, biblical reference. I totaled his car. That's why we're hitchhiking. It was a driving trip, but it was a driving trip, but I smashed his car. So then we had to hitchhike, and there we are hitchhiking. I forget how I managed to take the photo, but now what's happening in the Bible is that the Israelites, they lost their king, they lost their country, they were sent into exile, and then various machinations, which I'll return to in the last song, got them to be allowed to go back, which ought to be a great moment of victory, but it's not. It's just off. There's something off about the books where they go back. It's just not as good. They build the temple, but it's smaller, and basically the magic's gone. The magic's gone, and of course we're getting to the end of the history of Israel before you get to the New Testament, and so really it was all preparing you for the secret of letting go all the material stuff. And this side of heaven in my life is just all those unsatisfying questions that you don't have answers for. I did the video a little while ago, so some people will have already seen it, about how nothing quite works out right. I mean, I've got some love songs and things have worked out for me, but obviously, I've had a lot of things not work out too, and everyone does. So, how things don't work out in life.
Tableaus will stay posed this side of heaven. This side of heaven, you can get burned by sparks. All narratives and arcs have songs sometimes end, hearts don't always mend. This side of heaven, Israel's people reclaim their temple and their land, but they weep because it used to be so grand. The desert didn't bloom, the celebration day turned sour as families were torn away. I don't know try, but hope for you will only die. Why this side of heaven, this side of heaven, this this side of heaven. Can't find an answer to these questions this side of heaven. This side of heaven. Can't find an answer to these questions this side of heaven.
Oh, thanks for the nice comments, everyone. They weren't supposed to be Palestinians, Jackie. I don't know. I got my footage mixed up off YouTube. So I'm not a great historian. I shouldn't have done a history album, okay? So the next song is another one. Thanks for sticking with me, but this is one I also think isn't the best. I call it More because of, again, it's a song about a fantastic leader and a fantastic achievement. So they got back to Israel, to Jerusalem, and it was a mess with no walls. And in 52 days, they all pulled together, built up the walls, and it was a great moment of rejoicing, blah, blah, blah. But again, they blew it. They kind of didn't live, to God's template, and they got selfish, and just it was life business as usual. The same old sort of crappy existence that everyone lives with. And I mean, obviously the Bible is leaving you at this point to think there's got to be more, and there's a whole New Testament coming. So there's more. There's a whole other half. It's not, I don't think, where it didn't really touch, how did it touch my life? I suppose I just compared myself to Nehemiah, who was the leader, who was rebuilding it. And here's his prayer at the end of it. He says, "For this, remember me." He's saying to God, "Look, remember that I built the walls and I did this amazing thing, but also have pity on me, in keeping with your great love." Because basically he realized that it wasn't coming together. Even he could see that they needed more.
Nehemiah's wall, strong and straight and tall, will not falter. They all pulled their weight, 52 days straight, stretching gate to gate round the altar. March to the trumpet sound, sing praises in the crowd, read Moses' law out loud, hear the Torah. Nehemiah's zeal makes my will congeal. Never could I match leadership like that. Choir singing left and right, march to the temple side, serving purely Jehovah truly. But what use are walls that will not falter if our hearts never alter? In a year the people's will was crumbling, Nehemiah's prayer is humbling. Remember me by your love's accord, remember me, have mercy, Lord. Choirs on both sides, 'cause God's on our side. Heavenly host all glide, holy order. Come, Lord, like morning, come and your will be done. Come and complete the law, show me more.
Okay, you've made it through. We're up to the last song. Thank you so much for listening to all these songs. The last book is the Book of Esther, which is a really unusual book. It's again a woman's story, a really small story. She's essentially a harem girl, a queen, really, in Persia. She's of Jewish origin. It's a really unusual book because it's one of two books in the whole Bible that make absolutely no mention of the word God. Doesn't appear anywhere in the book. And so I determined that the word God would not appear anywhere in the song. And that helped me sort of think about all the people in my life. I suppose, we started with me looking over the wall and thinking about how God was there for all humanity. Even, a lot of people don't believe in God, that God even exists. But, I think I certainly have a lot of atheist friends, and it's not a spiritual relationship. I learn a lot about what's important in life and things, and I have really fantastic relationships. And I wanted to sort of celebrate that a bit in this song about from the book of the Bible that doesn't even mention God. So with the visuals in the first chorus, I just put together beautiful mathematics. I got these computer animations that are just based on mathematics, and thought, well, maybe I talk about whether there's any sort of guiding great power in the universe, and maybe it's all mathematics, and I could be. It's certainly beautiful, and it's just mathematics. But I'm a believer, obviously, and I just review my whole life. It's a sort of retrospective kind of a song. I go back to my sort of singer-songwriter mode. Isabel, you listening, you kind of inspired it a bit. I wrote the first of these songs after the launch of your album. Isabel, my niece, is a fantastic singer-songwriter, and I thought, guitar, singer-songwriter music, that's great. And I didn't really stick with it on the album. But I go back to my singer-songwriter guitar-y mode for this, and I found it very inspiring, your first album, beautiful. But yeah, I look back over my life, and I just I'll talk about the bit from the Bible. So there's a moment when Esther has to be incredibly brave. She's there because she's beautiful. She's gorgeous. She's the attractive. She's the king's queen, and she's replaced the previous queen. It's all very vicious. But her people, the Jewish people, are set to be exterminated, as so often happens in the history of mankind. And she is the one who has to go to the king. And I mean, the girls, the queens, the girls from the harem, they don't go to the king. They don't intervene in politics. And it was an incredibly brave thing for her to do. And this verse boils down her dilemma. She said, I will go to the king, even though it's against the law. And if I perish, I perish. And it was the song is sort of about being beautiful rather than looking beautiful. And then I suppose just bringing to a close all that theme of the invisible things and the choices we make being the spiritual and important things of life rather than the concrete and material things, which is sort of the lesson. It took 1,000 years maybe for humans to learn that the things we can see and the things that dazzle us are not the most important things. So anyway, here's my last song. Thank you so much for listening.
My history, so much of it is a mystery. To tell the truth, it often pissed me. Will this song make clear the gist to me? Friends get sick, some even die. I don't know why or who'll survive. For everything that gets better, another gets worse. So many patterns and chaos in the universe. Finish school, 'cause that's what we all did. Then to uni like a privileged kid. Never quite got a handle on a career. career. Don't really understand how I got here. Is someone up to things, pulling strings through my stress, my mess, excess, higher power or nothingness? I'll recognize it by the fruit. Be strong, be brave. Be strong, be brave. Be strong, be brave. I'll recognize it by its fruit. Be strong, be brave, be beautiful. Suddenly I'm on the edge of somewhere that Shakespeare would call a tide in the affair. Now's the time to be bold, not quietly reason. These moments seize you if you don't seize them. Be it fate or fictitious, destiny or superstitious. Threads woven in some moments make them extra auspicious. Make you wonder if there's more than you can take in through your senses. They change your world, they have consequences. Is it the moment you hear someone died? Or for better or worse, someone's yours for life? You may only see it in retrospect, that one event or decision and its ripple effect. Is someone up to things, pulling strings through my stress, my mess, excess, higher power or nothingness? I'll recognize you by your fruit. Be strong, be brave. 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 I'll recognize you by your fruit. Be strong, be brave. Be beautiful. Queen Esther's last option fell through. Her moment had come, she knew what to do. She chose to be beautiful, strong and brave. And her people were saved on either side. On any side. Wherever life deposits you. Be strong, be brave, be beautiful. From where you start. Be strong, be brave, your dented heart. Be strong, be brave, can guide you on a sacred path. Be strong, be brave, be strong, be brave. Be on either side. Be strong, be brave, be strong, on any side. Be strong, be strong, wherever life deposits you. Be strong, be brave, be strong, be brave. From where you start. Be your dented heart. Be strong, guide you on a sacred path. Be beautiful.
Okay. Well, good night, everyone. The album is out. It's available on all the services. They'll let anyone onto those services, iTunes and Spotify and YouTube and all that. So you just have to search for Paul H. Knight, History Pissed Me. You'll get a long list of albums with that name, not, and you just choose the one that comes up, and you can listen to it. Thanks so much for being with my album launch. Sorry for the technical difficulties, and thanks for your nice comments. I'm glad you're a disorderly agnostic and soft determinist person. Oh, it'd be lovely to see you again. And yeah, thanks so much for coming, and good night. We were going to finish at 9, but we finished at 9:38, so I'm sorry for anyone who's too late. Night. Sort of. I've said good night, but I can't get rid of you. Bye.